Hello everybody, it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We've reached another Friday, so of course, I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. So, are you one of the millions of romance fans who are waiting patiently or not so patiently for Bridgerton Season 3 Part 2? If you are, hopefully today's recommendations will potentially make the wait a little bit easier, because we're going to talk about films and series to watch while you wait for the second half of Penelope and Colin's love story. As always, these recommendations are available entirely for free with the use of your Milan-Berlin library card. So without any further ado, let's get to the recs. Okay, so our first recommendation of the day is going to be available on both Hoopla and on Canopy, and that is 2022's Mr. Malcolm's List. Now, of all of my recommendations today, this is the one that I think gives off the most direct Bridgerton vibes. They're both set in kind of an alternative Regency era England. They both lean really hard into certain historical romance tropes that I think most of us who are historical romance fans already look for in a good story. They're both delightfully colorblind casted, so you do have actors whom you've probably seen if you happen to be a fan of other British television or films. So you've got a really incredibly talented cast in both the Bridgerton series and in Mr. Malcolm's List. But beyond that, there are some pretty big differences. One of the biggest, of course, is that Mr. Malcolm's List does take on a much more traditional approach to Regency romance, and as such is decidedly less risque than Bridgerton. But I do think that's a good thing in some regards. So if you weren't a huge fan of the more racy elements of Bridgerton, this might be a good option for you. It's also a really easy entry point for a lot of people who are maybe not traditionally a historical romance fan, but kind of are curious about the genre in general. And you also have like a very traditional style of courtship within this one, as far as sort of like your quirky romance Regency stories go. There's very much an Austenian vibe to this, I think, especially when you get sort of into like some mistaken communication and identity kind of elements. And I do really like that about this one. So basic storyline, when the film opens, we meet Julia Thistlethwaite. She has just been jilted by this guy who's considered London's most eligible bachelor, Mr. Malcolm. She thinks he has done it in a particularly malicious way. She's humiliated, and she is definitely going to take her revenge, and she decides to rope in her friend Selina in order to do so. Mr. Malcolm has a list of qualities he wants in a partner. He's very determined about this, and he wants only these qualities, and if you don't fulfill them, you are clearly not the candidate for him. So Julia and Selina devise this little plot where Selina is going to sort of fake all of these qualities and then humiliate Mr. Malcolm in the way that Julia feels she was humiliated. Of course, this being a Regency rom-com, things do go awry. Different things are discovered about individual people, and it's not unpredictable. Again, there's certain elements of Regency romance that are quite predictable in general, but I don't think the predictability of what happens, like who ends up with whom and whatnot, I don't think those are negatives. If you do like a fun, silly kind of romance where there is some drama, you've got a whole lot of Austenian personality traits and quirks and scenes. If you enjoy those kinds of things, I definitely think you should check out Mr. Malcolm's List. If you enjoy the whole concept behind colorblind casting, I think that's another really great way to approach this one. You've got fantastic actors. Zawe Ashton is playing Julia Thistlethwaite. Frida Pinto plays Selina Dalton, her friend. And Selina and Mr. Malcolm's chemistry is really solid. Mr. Malcolm is played by Sope Diris, and the way the different elements play out on screen, it's, again, not unpredictable, but quite entertaining. And I think if you're just looking for a light, fun romance, this is definitely a really good option. It's a fast watch, and definitely a recommended film. Okay, my second recommendation for this week is available on Canopy, and that is 2013's Death Comes to Pemberley miniseries. Now, Death Comes to Pemberley is definitely a little bit of a departure from Bridgerton, but despite it being a little bit of a stretch, I do think fans of historical romance will definitely enjoy this miniseries. I'm always a sucker for tales that kind of continue the storylines for characters I'm familiar with. So I love that Death Comes to Pemberley takes Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet and throws them 6 years forward into their married life. What is going on? How do these two, who are so different from the people surrounding them, like Elizabeth's family members, her mother in particular, her ridiculous younger sisters, what are those relationships now that she's obviously significantly more removed, and she's got her own little ecosystem of life that she has going on? What happens, and how do those relationships shift and change? Spoiler alert, some of them don't change at all. How do different characters grow as people, and how do some of them stay exactly the same? And it was really fun to revisit certain people that you loved or hated in Austen's Pride and Prejudice. It was just a really entertaining watch, and it's a quick one. It's 3 episodes long. This is definitely tonally quite different from Pride and Prejudice as well. We do come at it from more of like a mystery side of things. I mean, Death Comes to Pemberley, where we are trying to find out what happens on the night of a murder. Characters we haven't seen in a while are wrapped up in all of this drama, and we have to unravel the mystery behind it. And I really did actually like figuring out who was behind everything, because, you know, arrow-wise, this is a good period of time for those sort of like old-fashioned mysteries, but then you also like throw in these very classic romance characters. I thought this was very enjoyable, and I don't know why I'd not watched it previously. But this was a fun one. Again, it's super quick. It's only 3 episodes long. It's got some fantastic actors in your roles, and the chemistry between the characters is also really good, whether we're talking about Darcy and Elizabeth, or we're talking about Elizabeth and her younger sisters, or Elizabeth and Lady Catherine de Bourgh. There are a couple of scenes with her that are absolutely fantastic, just because we see where Elizabeth is now. She is married to Fitzwilliam Darcy. Like, she is not to be cowed by anybody. But how do you still maintain the niceties that society requires you to? I loved seeing that, because, I mean, that is a question. You have this woman who clearly is very confident in who she is, but now she has the eye of all of society on her because she's married into this ridiculously powerful family. So while eccentricities could be overlooked when she was still just a Bennet, what happens when she becomes a Darcy? How do her family's eccentricities affect the Darcy family now, today, especially with the drama of this murder going on? If you do watch it, definitely see if you see the actual murderer coming or not, if you were able to piece the bits and pieces and clues together, because it is, like I said, quite an interesting storyline. So if you are looking for something quite fun and that can give you a little bit of a break from that sort of rom-com vibe, but still give you all of the historical romance that you could want, make sure you check out Death to Pemberley. It's, again, a quick watch and definitely worth it. Okay, final recommendation for today. This one is available on Canopy, and that is 2020's Falling for Figaro. Falling for Figaro is definitely the biggest departure from Bridgerton, but I do think elements of this story really, really vibe with that of Penelope and the romance between Penelope and Colin. Falling for Figaro is not a historical romance, first and foremost. Absolutely not. In Falling for Figaro, we are primarily following Millie. Millie is an American fund manager. She lives in the UK. She's got a great job. She has everything that she needs. She's got money, a phenomenal apartment. She has a stable, long-term boyfriend. She has a good, solid career, but none of it is fulfilling. She has been going about this life and she's been doing everything that society is telling her she needs to do, but it's all kind of empty. And the crux of this story is Millie figuring out who she is and both figuratively and literally finding her voice. She decides one day that she's going to go ahead and fulfill her lifelong dream of being an opera singer. She is quite talented. It's not one of those situations where this girl has no clue. She's never sung before in her life kind of thing. She does have a gift, but she doesn't really have the background. She doesn't have any of the real skill set that being propelled in that world would require. She decides to quit her job, her very lucrative job, and moves away to the Scottish Highlands in order to train with this incredibly famous, brilliant vocal teacher who also happens to be kind of a horrendous human being in some ways. And this person is played by Joanna Lumley, who is always fantastic. I love her so much. But she was a former opera diva, Megan Joffrey Bishop, and she is the woman who can help Millie become a famous opera singer. And the idea is that she will help Millie get to the point where she can win this sort of ridiculously famous opera competition, which will then help launch her career. While she is training, she also meets another of Megan's students named Max. And of course, this being a romantic comedy, Millie and Max are at odds essentially from the get-go. Like most rom-coms, this is not the most unpredictable tale, but it's how we get from point A to point B that's really the fun part. Seeing the relationship Millie develops between the people in this teeny tiny little Scottish Highland town. She's very much a fish out of water. Like I said, she's got money. She's got a lucrative job. She has everything that these people imagine most people her age would want. And she leaves it all behind for a career that will most likely always have a level of uncertainty to it. And they think she's crazy because it is an interesting choice, a very brave choice in a lot of ways, but certainly an interesting one. And watching Millie and Megan's relationship develop and watching Millie and Max's relationship develop is really, really the big fun of this movie. And it's the heart of it. The music is almost secondary in a lot of ways, though if you do enjoy opera, it is lovely and it's filled with a ton of little snippets from famous opera classics. But yeah, I really saw a lot of Millie and Colin's storyline in the of Penelope and Colin's storyline in this, just because the way that they're much more friendly in certain ways and how that sort of changes and shifts over time, and then the antagonistic elements of their relationship as well sort of come out. I always enjoy those kinds of romances. I think they're really fun to watch and see how each couple develops and how that relationship shifts is always just delightfully entertaining. So if you're looking for something that's not necessarily historical but does take place in Great Britain, does have like a really fun romantic relationship at the center of it, and features a female lead who is just looking for something different and something more, make sure you check out Falling for Figaro. It really is a phenomenal, phenomenal film in general, and it was just a really fun watch. All right, so those were my recommendations for what to watch while you're waiting for Bridgerton Season 3 Part 2. If you have any recommendations you would like to share that also fit that theme, please comment and put those below. If you have any recommendations for themes you'd like to see us cover in the future, definitely share those. Always looking for help with that. As always, thank you so much for joining me. This one was a real delight to sort of comb through the catalog looking for Bridgerton-esque storylines that I could share with you, and it was just a lot of fun. Like I said, I watched a couple of things that I've never even heard of before, so that was really fun for me. So again, thank you for joining me, and hopefully I will see you next time. Bye bye.